everyone. My name is Mary and Sumalinab. Today I will share to you my reflection which talks about the Philippine history from the Book of Torrentera and Source Book. So, we will start from the Book of Torrentera, which entitled with the introduction of Philippine historiography, source, and the source. So, in this reflection, I used the mode of mirroring, and this topic discussed about the primary source and secondary source in which history could be defined. These materials are truly fact because these are made by people who witnessed the past events. Having a document of past events is easier to identify the facts of history. The Filipino historians was given a task to distinguish the context of culture and historical value. It uncovers the myths and misconceptions that tells about the Filipino culture that identify to colonize the challenging contemporary Filipino. The Philippine historiography derives only the truth of history that studies to signify the wideness of our Filipinos' past. The history tells about the past events that has been ample mapped. Historiography is always moving and continuous to undertake and integrate well-founded history. So as a student and as a youth, I learned how past societies, cultures, technology could be defined to connect with the past events, especially the history of Philippines. The thing that I could do is to give value and appreciate the perpetrated history, which gives us a wide knowledge about the source and the source of our finches. Like us people, we should know how to value people around us, show the goodness to them as they show the goodness to us. We should appreciate every time that they show their kindness to us, and we should do the same to them. I feel that Philippine historiography helps us to be more scrupulous, that makes us prudent of a certain things that happens before. Knowing our history always reminds us that we Filipino are rich in sources, and through the Philippine history, we can learn to observe the things that happened in the beginning. It gives us, through the fear, some to be a description about the source and the source of our antecedents. So next, we have the history of the Philippine Islands. In this reflection, I used the mode of mirroring again. So this reflection discusses the life of our ancestors. It talks about their daily lives from their clothes to their principle of leadership. They had unity. They were united to maintain peace and order for their followers. Slavery has been present in their time, and the slaves must be have to serve their lord. There are two types of slaves, and they are called sagigilid and namamahayan. They had their very own version of marriage, just like the dowry furnished by a man and given to the family of his wife. Barter trading of goods and supplies was present in their time. They had no idea about religion, and they only worshipped about the object or wild animals, which they called anito. There is one thing that I can see in myself as a student doing, and that is being proud of being Mandaya. Because of my ethnicity, I have things to be in and to follow proper etiquette, just like talking in our own language and believing in some superstitious acts. It is still present up to these days because there are some points that are still occurring, just like dowry, an inheritance of some properties, and style of clothing. Aside from that, There are still old civilizations that are modernized by technology and yet in the living an old way. I feel I feel bad for those slaves because they are treated like a dog. They follow what their owners say, and they are being sold to their natives. They had no right to live freely. They are used to work always without any stipend, and they should be always made to work for a compulsory wage. Aside from that, I am happy that in the present there are no things like slavery and people are free to do what they want without any command taken. Next, we have the Manungo Jar. In this reflection, I use the mode of microscoping. So the word that I get and struck me the most was the word of Manungo Jar. So the Manungo Jar shows that our maritime culture is so paramount to us as this reflected our ancestors' religious beliefs. As we can see, the image of Manungo Jar, the famous figure in the top handle of the cover, symbolizes the journey of the soul to the afterlife. In short, we can identify as it a burial jar. Because of the popularity of this piece, it has become and is acknowledged as the finest Philippine pre-colonial artwork considered as a masterpiece. On the top of the cover of the Manungo Jar, we can see the two human or a person whose hands are crossed on their chests, representing that they are being left by their loved ones. Their position was a traditional practice of the Filipinos. The Manungo Jar is about the tradition and culture of ancient times. The next reflection is the Laguna copper plate. In this reflection, I use the mode of microscopy. So the Laguna copper plate pushed back the history of the Philippines by 600 years ago. A 10-line inscription on the metal has been apprehended by Dutch anthropologist, namely Anton Posma. Prior to deciphering the text on the Laguna copper plate, historians had almost universally accepted the history of the Philippines. According to the Book of History, it was written in a combination of Sanskrit, Old Malay, Old Javanese, and Old Tagalog. This is the language that can be used to understand what is the copper plate. As we can see the copper plate, we cannot directly understand because the way of writing is fathomable. In the Book of Torrentera, it stated that the Laguna copper plate was complete, and this had a similar piece with an inscription on it. Move to the next reflection, the duties of the Katipunan of the Son of the People, or KKK. So in this reflection, I use the mode of mirroring. So the duties of the Son of the People discuss the love for the society that includes sacrificing, which does not include being a selfish person. It talks about unity and what a person can do for a community or a society. It was stated there that you should always choose and become faithful in your community, as well as in your society. As son of peoples, overall responsibilities includes becoming humanitarian with compassion and love for human beings. It was used to organize armed resistance and terrorist association as a sign of Katipunan. The KKK, also known as Kataas-Taasan Kagalang-galangang Katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan. So, me as a student, I must, act like a good citizen and show the kindness to the people around us. And it is our duty to serve people who are around us. As a student, we must always think about the goodness and the good things that we can do in our society. Until now, we can see that a lot of people still giving importance and care to the people in their community. They help and give they all they can. I feel more helpful and broaden my knowledge in valuing the people around me, not only my duties as a son of people or a daughter, but also to be a good daughter to my parents and God. We know how to value our family and people in our community. Now, I will share to you my reflection about the Philippine History source book. So, we will start from the Soul Boat, a Filipino journey of self-discovery. So, I use the mirroring for this reflection. So, this reflection studied about the Soul Boat, the journey of self-discovery. This discussed all about the way of disposing dead people, what are they being used, and where dead people are being placed. It stated on the book that dead people from the past was put in a hollowed out wood, and it was long tradition of the Philippines. And before they developed other form of burial that includes inhumation of wrapping in mats and free bark, and they make interment corpses. And simultaneously, they made coffins with triangular section in which have an appearance of rotted boat. They called it as a boat coffin or as a soul boat, in which uses a spirit to sail the world of death. The overall says discussed about the archaeological evidence about burial jar and coffin burial. This soul boat has a ritual that figured instructed to reveal the beliefs, but coffins was shape of the boat that serves as house of dead people. Customs of Tagalog. In this reflection, I use the mode of microscope. This explains about what society does Filipino have. It tells what kind of leadership those in high position and authority, what kind of management those in a high position had, and what kind of management and how they treated their constituent. Our history tells us that there was a chief who was called a dato, where he can have a high position to oversee a community with the three casters. First is the nobles, who were better known as the Maharlika. The second one is commoners, who were known as aliping na mamahay. The third is the slaves, in simple word, alipin. These three castles describes how was the customs of Tagalog before. The nobles is people who did not pay taxes or don't tribute to the dato, but mostly they accompany him in war. Aims in La Solidaridad. In this reflection, I use the mirroring mood. The La Solidaridad was an example of propaganda movement wherein the propagandists are seeking reforms for the Philippines and to unite a whole archipelago into one society with equality for Filipino and Spaniards in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial rule. It stated that La Solidaridad served as the mouthpiece of propagandists. They are aiming to introduce a wider audience as awareness towards the Spanish colonizer. As a student, if I given a chance, I would like to participate in a propaganda movement to help in achieving the main goal of the movement, and that is the good for everyone, as long as it has a good benefit to our country.
I should fuck her in the Benz.